I started working with clay when I was like 20, probably like 20 years old. I had taken, I guess, a gap year from high school, went to East Los Angeles Community College, and I really wanted to take an elective, and I didn't know what to take. And I had one friend that I made at school, and so we decided to take a ceramics class together, and I never left. I just loved the idea of the medium and how it's just so unpredictable and predictable at the same time. It's a mysterious material. There's a lot you can do with it. I also like the sense of community that was built around it. Like, I made so many friends just taking a class. We were very dedicated. I really loved my professor, and eventually I was asked to work as a student tech there, and it just made me want to be there even more. I was able to work on my own work and make some kind of living, and something about that was just like really promising to me. And it's like it accepted me, I guess. I felt really accepted in that community because I came from a place where making ceramic gates and making art is not, it's not common where I'm from. My name is Claudia V. Solórzano, and I am from East LA, and I'm an artist. We're at my Claremont Graduate University studio, and I'm in my second year of my MFA. So my first gate was rendered after my front gate of my house, where I grew up with my family in City Terrace of East Los Angeles, and I noticed that my gate was really unique in comparison to my neighbors and down the street. It wasn't like every house had a gate like mine. There was like similarities and different like styles and the way the swirls would kind of come together on the gate. I was just really attracted to kind of recreating that. But what really did start it was that my grandfather's house was sold. And when it got bought by these new people, they got rid of his gate, which was also very unique. And they traded it out for like the horizontal like wood paneling. And so luckily before they got rid of that gate, I was able to visit the house really quickly, take some photographs, and then I attempted to like kind of recreate his gate. But his gate was so large. It was just like this really big, it was a driveway gate that was really beautiful. And painted over and over. I just liked the layers, and that he like tried to preserve what he had meant a lot to me. And so just to know that like they just like got rid of it, like no questions asked, like that thing's gone. And so I think that's what sparked. I was like, oh, I want to make my neighbor's gate. I want to make the down street gate. Like I was just like noticing all the architecture. Like I love the swirls. I love the way they like have these diamond forms, and it's just like kind of unifies the whole community. And it does also touch on like gentrification. That's not like my goal for my work, but it is there. That's what sparked it, was this gentrification that never like affected me before until now. And so that's where it started. I was in grad school when I started to make the gates. So this was 1.5 years ago when I started. Before that, I was making like chain link fence kind of pieces, which also reference my grandfather, because like most houses have chain link fence between them. That it's like a good signifier of like property and kind of security too. There's like this false security behind these gates, right? They're kind of there to protect you or to like tell people like don't come further. However, like these things are broken into all the time. It's false. Like there is no safe place, really. The first time I made a gate and presented it to any kind of viewer was here at CGU, but we were it was during the pandemic, so nobody was allowed to see it. So that was actually really hard. Nobody saw my gates for a long time. Nobody was, staff, faculty weren't here in person, so everything was over Zoom. So they saw pictures of it, and of course, like, people liked it, like, they liked the idea, and I think once they came to see it in person, they grasped, like, oh, it's like pieces of clay like intertwined and holding itself together. Some of these gates, fences, they kind of have some movement because I don't glaze everything thoroughly. I kind of like the raw clay, and I like the idea of like these pieces like coming together, and then in the firing it like holds itself together, like it moves. It's like, oh, it might break, it might break. I love the danger in it, and the challenge of the material, but that they stay together is the best part. It feels really good. It's a lot like a community, right? Like we're all on our different paths and we're like crossing each other, but we're in our day-to-day lives. And I think that's kind of where the chain link fence kind of derives from too, that idea of a community. My relationship right now with my community is I live still in East Los Angeles, and I partake in the community by going out, being friendly, once in a while helping my mom clean up whatever mess is in the gutters, because that happens. Yeah, I think just like making work about it for me is probably as far as I go. I mean, I kind of do keep to myself. Well, I do know my neighbors, but I'm not, shaky. I'm not knocking on everybody's door. Naturally, in communities like ours, sometimes neighbors do each other dirty from time to time. I know recently my neighbor hit my other neighbor's car, and they tried to say it wasn't them, even though everyone in the neighborhood saw it was, and they parked their car like around the block to hide it. But there was too many witnesses, because we're all watching. In a neighborhood like that, we're all watching each other's back to stay.
It's a community.
It's just a community.
We're all watching for each other.
Yeah, we're all watching for each other. Make sure, like, hey, are you okay? Like, should I step in? Should I tell them I saw something? It's very see something, say something. I grew up in a household, we're not a big grapefruit fan. However, our neighbor always gives us his grapefruits, which is so sweet. We can't say like, we're not really a big fan of grapefruits, because that would be rude, and like, it's really hard to come across a nice neighbor, in my opinion. It's like, so once you have them, you keep them, because you never know when they might leave or can't afford their house payment and have to go, and then somebody new, and you have to start all over, and it might not be the same. So, I mean, it's about cherishing like what you have and the ones that are in your lives, definitely. Prior to CGU and just to make a living, I was an artist assistant for Anna Sue Hoy. I definitely consider her family. She's very close to me. I love her very much. I love her work, and I love her as a person. And I admire her drive. If there's anybody I want to be like as far as working ethic, I think it would be Anna Sue Hoy. Teachable moment with working for Anna would probably be just learning how she navigated getting her artwork sent out, and having them make sure that that she's taken care of by the people that would like to have her work. I don't know, actually. Yeah, it's tough, because a lot of it she was learning too, I feel like. I think we were both learning. I feel like we're constantly learning. I think setting boundaries, making sure that whoever wants you to speak, whoever wants your artwork, just make sure that they will cover you, that nothing really comes out of your pocket. I mean, we're struggling artists as it is, so any kind of funding that we can get so that we can survive and do our jobs is helpful, I think. Yeah, so that was good of her. The way I document my neighborhood's gates, I either walk my dog, which I do anyway, I'll walk my dog and I'll just take my iPhone out and snap some pictures of their gates, sometimes of like their window bars. Some window bars are very beautiful, very intricate. And other times I will just Google my own address and walk through the Google Maps and screenshot, because there's something about getting like an aerial view of something, or like a street view of something that's a little better. But also I want to respect my neighbor's privacy, so I try to do just their front gates and very discreetly, but there's something about me having like a camera and taking a picture of someone's house. Like I feel like I wouldn't like somebody to do that to my home. It's fine if they want to take a picture of my gate or like whatever window bars we have, which aren't as pretty as the ones in the neighborhood, but our gate is really nice. But yeah, due to respect the privacy, I try to just use whatever is public, like Google Maps, which is great. And it also, I don't know, it puts like this layer between me where, I don't know, I feel like there's safety on both ends. Like nobody's thinking I'm gonna rob them, and I'm not thinking that they're gonna like be upset with me. Yeah. Chain link is like very decorative, but it's also like a symbol of like, maybe like oppression to some people, but I like using it as like as a way to like shed light on something more familiar and not so sad. Yeah, this kind of reminds me of like a purse, you know, like there's something about it's like something about it that's like really purse-like, but it's also really, really gate-like. I like to have like a loose piece around. Yeah, and I just do a lot of twisting and mending until I get the shape that I want, or like the texture that I like. Making these, I use an extruder, a clay extruder. I use whatever clay I have. Sometimes I make it at the facility I'm at, or I just come across a bag of clay. In my line of work, there's people leaving bags of clay all the time. And so I was able to just score on bags of clay and run it through the extruder, and then just start making shapes, like familiar shapes. Like I like using swirls. I love making like chain link. I started to make these gates larger when I had access to a bigger kiln, one that specifically can pull out, where the bed of the kiln pulls out and I can work around that bed. And I like to make it all in one day if I can. So I'll extrude a bunch of clay with the extruder, have it laid out on like a movable table of some kind, and then just start to map out what kind of gate I'm making. Once in a while, I'll get some butcher paper and I'll draw out the gate that I'm referencing. Usually it's like a neighbor, somebody down the street, one of their gates, or something like it. It's not always specifically theirs. It's like pieces of theirs. And then I just put the coils along the lines that I've drawn, and then go from there. And just like, I don't know, mend the pieces together. I don't have like a technical term. It's just a lot of twisting and mending with my hands. Making these fences, I was trying to figure out a way to hang them differently. I use a lot of cup hooks and a lot of screws, wood screws, just naturally. It kind of gets the job done. There's also something really domestic about screws and cup hooks to me, so it just felt really fitting to use them to hang up my artworks. But I was kind of looking for something a little different, and I naturally have a lot of assortments of like ribbons, of fabrics, and so for a couple of fences, I used like chiffon ribbon, like you see on that one, which I've named Pinky due to the fact that it's pink, but also it's in reference to the painting Pinky that's from the Huntington. I don't know if you're familiar with that. Okay. Also behind me is the Blue Boy, also in reference to that. And they're both really frilly, and I kind of like playing with that contrast, like something really frilly, but then something really hard, and you know, doesn't sound, well, maybe this one sounds okay, but it's hard, and it makes weird sounds. Oh, see, there's the sound, like that kind of sound, is that scratchy ceramic sound. It's not so pleasant, but I like the contrast of something soft and sheer to hold something a little weighty up. And they just happened to be, I just chose the paint color. I didn't mean to. It just like was testing out some glazes, and that's what it looked like. And the blue I knew would be blue. I was just seeing what it did. These two were really highly experimental, but I ended up really loving both of them. And that one has a cookie cutter of a saw and a drill, just to kind of, talk about masculine objects, like put on with some feminine objects. It's just like a real quick like comment on gender and like how meaningless it is really to think that an object could have a gender in general. But these are gendered, like naturally. I think as humans, like we've been conditioned, pink is for girls, blue is for boys. And that's the end of it. But I'm kind of touching on like, nah, that's not always the case. Like, there's like many different options now. So yeah, that's where these two pieces come from and where their colors derive from. I'm terrible at doing research on where these gates and fences kind of derive from. I can say that likely, from what I've gathered, they're of European descent, like the swirls. You see them in Europe too, these similar motifs. Mostly what I've read up on is like window bars were kind of made to protect the house from the raids. And nobody wants to look like they're in jail, so they made these beautiful swirl designs on them to give a more pleasing look to their overall aesthetic. And I think that's what we've done here in Los Angeles. We've just brought over some European inspiration to our windows and gates. Making these gates and these fences were inspired by not only like my community, but like by other artists who I saw painting is where I saw it first. I have a friend who's a painter, and she was painting gates and like pieces of her neighborhood, and like I was like, I want to do something similar to that. It felt so good to see her work that I wanted to feel good about making something like that in my work. I wanted my work to be like positive. I didn't want it to come from like a negative place. I wanted it to be really loving. Because in the past, before grad school, my work came kind of from like a really dark, sad place. But as I've grown as an adult to appreciate what I have and where I came from, I was able to make work like this. Yeah. Surprisingly. I started figuring out what kind of work I wanted to make when I came here to CGU. Prior to that, my undergrad was great at schooling me on the material and glaze calculation and shrinkage rate of clays and craft and rendering. Throwing, you become classically trained if you take it seriously, but I didn't feel... It felt like myself at the time, but I changed. I think like I was really young and naive then, and I feel more of an adult now than I did then. So I feel like this is like my truest work now, as opposed to the work I was making in undergrad in a community college. Because back then I think I was just like mimicking what I thought professors wanted to see from me and what I thought I was supposed to be doing, what things were supposed to look like. When I got here, my work kind of became looser and not so perfect and like well rendered. Not that my work was perfect prior, but there's just something about it looking like a drawing is the happiest I've ever been with my work. Whereas like before I was like kind of down on myself, like, oh, the glaze didn't come out right, or that didn't look as real as I thought it did, or there's something about this, it's like, obviously it's not real. Like, obviously, these aren't functional gates and window bars and fences, and there's something really wonderful about that, and yeah. I think my work touches on all sorts of lower income communities, like in general. I'm not gonna see window bars in Beverly Hills, I don't think. I mean, maybe one day. Maybe,
not as nice, though.
Yeah, not as nice. Maybe I'll get commissioned to do their window bars in ceramic, yeah. I wouldn't call my work activist. I would call it, I don't know. I would call it love from like just it's just my love of home. It's really domestic and domestic inspired, and I guess I would say that my work is just it's just a representation of where I'm from. Like, it's really, really that simple. I mean, it could be a lot. It could be a symbol of like gentrification. It could be a symbol of social class, 100%. But it is a lot of those things. But it comes from a nicer place. I love my community and I hate my community at the same time. See, if you dissect my work, why are these window bars existing? Why is this sense of security so important to me? It's because, I don't always feel safe in my neighborhood. As much as I love it, and sure I can walk, it doesn't mean that I'm not turning around to see who's walking behind me, who's walking in front of me. And as much as these gates and fences represent that low-income place where I was born and raised, there's also this hope. I think my work is like a big sense of hope. Like, I'm hoping that you guys know that I love you, but we're being gentrified, we're being kicked out, we have to do better. So earlier you asked, like, is it like a sense of activism? I don't know. I don't see it that way, but now that I'm talking about it, maybe a part of it is. It's a lot of things, but it's mostly just a sense of hope and love. I don't know how to answer the question of where I consider my work to be. I think I find my work to be, just in the art world in general. I don't know if there's like a specific genre for my kind of work. I mean, people will probably say like Latinx art, which I see. I'm of Latin descent. I totally identify with all of that, but I wish I don't know. I just want to be where the other artists are. I just want to be considered an artist without having to be just of a Latin descent person. Yeah. My version of success is just as long as I'm still being able to have some kind of income and make the work that I want to make, then I'm happy. Like, if I can eat, sleep, make work, and if I have to work, that's a happy day for me, that's a happy life, and I'm content with that.